Guys, please put your hands together for my friend, the Undersheriff of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, Kevin McMahill.
I didn't think I was coming on till 1 o'clock, so I didn't get a chance to check my teeth or anything. All right. Hey, so John told me I had 20 minutes, so I usually never speak with notes, but I wrote a few things down that I wanted to, because there's so much, like all of you, that I would have an opportunity to talk to you for 2.5 hours and I still wouldn't stop, because it just literally pours from my heart and what I believe in and why I believe it. And so, but as we start this, I want to, you've had so many different folks share so many different things, and I have to tell you that in 26 years of policing, I've really probably only been doing this type of it for these last 6 years. And I'll tell you the God's honest truth is, lately I've been very tired. It takes a lot out of your heart and soul. It wears you out sometimes because of the very lives that are at stake about this. Truthfully, for the first time in my career, I actually thought about my retirement and when I'm going to do it and what I want to do. And I'll tell you why. Part of that is because of this. These people. Part of that is because in my jurisdiction today, I have 134 people that have been murdered. 5 of those murders are 6 years and under. And nobody talks about what those people's names are, who they are. What I know is that 134 mothers and fathers and sisters and brothers and families will never be the same because of an act of violence in our community. And it hurts my soul. And I also know that the national level dialogue that occurs today about particularly African American community and police, people are trying to divide us more than what already existed. But I consistently hear and see and watch what occurs in communities all across this country, to include ours, and the narrative that is being put out by Black Lives Matter and so many other groups. And I will tell you that many times the police, we are our own worst enemy because we do some really dumb things. 900-some thousand police officers across this great country of ours, 200 of them or so are about jackasses, right? But those are pretty good numbers, folks. We make mistakes. Pardon my French, I know there's a lot of pastors in here. But I have to say to you also that every time I hear the Black Lives Matter piece of it, it just eats at me because I know one thing. And this goes back to what started me down this path, was that I was the captain of Boulder Area Command, just a mile or two down the street, historic West Las Vegas, predominantly African American community then. Now, the Hispanic community actually outweighs the African American community. It's the place where entertainers would come to Las Vegas, entertain people all over the Las Vegas Strip, but they couldn't stay in the hotel, so they would come back to West Las Vegas and they would have great cultural events, great parties, and do great things. The black side of town. And as the captain there, we had done a number of great things. There's some great pastors in the room. Pastor Troy, Pastor Rogers back there, 2 of which partnered with us early on, Mujahid Ramadan. A number of people that helped us try to prevent violence that was occurring in our community. We started the sort of the Boston 10-point model. 2006, the pastors would come out to prevent the retaliatory violence. And as the captain there, when I went there, in the first 6 months, the first night, I went to a homicide. And in the next couple of months, I stood over the bodies of 13 young, dead black men. And nobody cared. Nobody cared except that young man's mama and that young man's family. Nobody cared. And every time I listened to this issue that police didn't care, there was one thing that I knew about every one of those murders in my career where a young, dead black man was, that there was one group of people that really did care. And that was the cops, the detectives, the investigators, the crime scene folks that were out there doing every single thing that they could to bring a sense of justice to that family and track down that killer. That, I know. I can testify to that all day. I've seen it hundreds of times. But what I also know is that you can never start to make meaningful change in any law enforcement organization if you don't take and put the time and effort and energy and faith into changing the very hearts and minds of the police. Because if you don't do that in any one of the programs that you have in your community, you will always have that program in your community. Because the cops can do all kinds of things to ensure that you will always have work in your community. We can do a lot of things that make it worse, right, Chief? You know, I don't know you. I purposely haven't came up to meet you yet, Chief. But I know a lot about you, right? I read a lot about what you do, right? I also know about your outgoing chief there and what he said about law enforcement after the death of your 5 officers, that we asked cops to do too much or something like that, right? Right? So here's the point I want to make to you about this. Strong police leaders, Chief, have absolutely everything to do with the impact that programs can have in a community. And your time and investment that you spend in getting the law enforcement within your community to have heart and passion for what it is that you're attempting to achieve is absolutely critical to the success that you will see. The single biggest question that I get asked, today I'm the number 2 guy. I just want to take 2 seconds and describe Las Vegas to you, because most of you come from places that's nothing like this. There's only 1 or 2 police departments like this. We are a large major metropolitan police department, 6th or 7th in the country in size. Our jurisdiction goes from Utah to California, south to Arizona. One of the largest counties in the entire country. We have joined the police department together in 1973 with the county sheriff, so we have an elected sheriff as the head of our organization. There's a reason I tell you this. Because most police chiefs are appointed by a mayor, a council, a manager, and all of them work at the will of that person. Our sheriffs are elected to run a major metropolitan police department, and they work at the will of the people. Most sheriff's departments have a very small jurisdiction. Most of them run the jail. We also run the jail. A mile or so down the road, 4,000 people are locked up. And as I go through my career in trying to understand, when people ask me, why in the world would you spend time and effort and energy on a Hope for Prisoners program? And what I really want you 2 chiefs to hear from me also is one of the single biggest struggles that I deal with today. My violent crime in totality is up 14% in our jurisdiction. My murders are up 30% in my jurisdiction. So what do you think is the number one thing that people say? Why are you doing these community programs that don't work? Take those cops back and do what we're good at. Hooking and booking, put them on the car, put them in jail. Right? Because Hope for Prisoners, you won't see immediate results. You won't have overnight change in your community. You won't have the immediate results that you can stand before your council and say, I went in with these resources and I did these things. Because the effort and energy for Hope for Prisoners is far greater than mustering a whole bunch of cops to go into a neighborhood to saturate and take care of a particular problem that you have, which will only come back as soon as you leave. Right? The second part of that, though, is in understanding, right, when I keep going back to heart and mind, is when your chief said that the police are responsible for dealing with too many of the problems, the truth is the customer of the police is the product of every other single failed social system in America. Right? The people that we deal with are addicts, homeless, mentally ill, unemployed or underemployed. Those are all the people that we deal with. So, my response to you is simply this. Why wouldn't we be involved? Why don't we have a responsibility to help out? Because there's one thing I do know about police leadership. When you ask, they don't tell you no. I've never asked anybody at any level in this community to come to a meeting and was told no. See, that's what law enforcement brings to your partnerships. That's what law enforcement leadership brings to your partnership. That's the opportunity that is provided for you to go in to get law enforcement leadership. But the problem is, you can grab law enforcement leadership because we're all beginning to finally have real discussion across the country about what this means. But until you literally get law enforcement leadership to look at how it is they break the culture of their police department, and they get the men and women of the police department to believe, you're never going to make any difference. Right? So, I'll give you one example. In 2010, we shot 25 people. Every 2 weeks, I'm getting a phone call. We shot somebody else. 2 nights ago, we shot our 7th person this year. All armed, all non-controversial, still not good enough. But a police department willing to look at its warts and do something about it. That's what is the real value of it. And then when influential leaders like yourselves within law enforcement really begin to have those discussions, the reality is, if you get to the heart of those men and women, the mind will follow, and their actions will follow. And that's when you start to see the absolute cultural change within a police organization that allows you to do things like John Ponder and so many others are doing. I have to tell you this, though, because when they ask me about this, all of these other problems, I know that incarceration doesn't fix mental health. I know that incarceration doesn't fix unemployment and underemployment. I know that incarceration doesn't fix addiction. I know it doesn't fix fatherless families. Hell, it doesn't fix anything. We have a role and a responsibility and a God-given right to help those human beings as they reintegrate into society.
All right.
And police are a powerful voice in doing that. But I got to tell you something else. I want to read you a policy that still exists. Because when Chris, by the way, I wanted to say something about you two. Those 2 lieutenants that stood before you here a few minutes ago, Lieutenant Petco and Lieutenant Hughes, they're both retired. Okay? This isn't, look, think about how magical and powerful that is. Both have great retirements. They can go do whatever they want. But their heart was captured, and they're here, and they're helping. That's remarkable. Now, I also say to you that the first meeting, when John sucked me in, that first meeting that I asked Chris to put together to come forward and get a number of people, I think we must have had 40 or 50 initial people we made the initial plea to. Is that about right, Chris? Or more?
No, we had a cultural thing we had to overcome with that.
Well, yeah, we did, but eventually we got a bunch of cops in the room. And I thought, I'll get them to do it. No. Because really, I mean, leadership is a lot about influence, right? It's about influence. So I thought, well, I'll be able to get them. Well, they came right away. I said, what do you want me to do? I said, well, I want you to go in and work in this mentorship program with returning offenders. Chris was on board. We're trying to convince these people, right? And they said, well, we got this policy, Sheriff. Actually, I think I was a chief at the time. I don't remember, but they read it to me. It said 410102, associating with persons of ill repute. Members will not knowingly associate with persons of bad character, except to accomplish a police assignment. Persons of bad character include anyone where association with the person would tend to bring the employee or department into public discredit or would have the potential to inhibit the department's ability to accomplish its vision and mission. And I would have hid behind it too if I was them. Right? I would have. Then they went to the next one, 4101.03, fraternisation prohibited. I said, well, look, this interpretation, right? This is all about a professional police relationship, right? And getting into the heart and the mind and the character of the people on both sides. And when we did it, I think Chris mentioned there was 6 or 7 out of that 40 or 50 that decided to step forward and follow his bold leadership to do it. And we had a number of huddles where we're like, I don't know how we're going to get away with this one, right? And I can't remember, John, but exactly how this happened, but both he and Chris at one point called me and said, oh, we're going to have to shut this thing down, or, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? I said, well, what happened? Somebody in the program stole a car or something. He was on the way to Hope for Prisoners or something like that. I said, whatever, man. We're not going to get 100% in anything we do. Right? Come on. Nobody's 100%. So drive on. Keep going. That's where we're at. That's what we do. That's how we do it. Right? So, I know I'm running out of time, but I'll just say to you this. The critical aspect of leadership in our communities and figuring out how in the world we get to what you're trying to do so well, Bob, and what you've been doing for so long. I think it requires us to really reset ourselves. And I sat in the back in the corner by myself initially, and then Todd joined me because I looked lonely. But I sat back there and I made an observation about the room. Look around the room. Make an observation yourself. We gravitate not based on race necessarily. We gravitate based on comfort. We know who we know. This is a room full of people with heart and passion and soul for what it is that we're talking about. Yet one another, right now, if I was walking in the room, I might make the determination there's a problem in this room. But what I know is you go to where you go in part because of the comfort. Leaders have a responsibility to begin to provide a level of comfort in our community that has never existed. Ever existed. Half the time that I wade through this stuff, I don't know if I know what the hell I'm doing either. But I'm going to tell you this. I have to thank all of you because you've rejuvenated my passion. You've rejuvenated my spirit. You've rejuvenated my belief in what it is that we've been working so hard to get to. We've had a lot of success here. But I encourage you to continue to look in that mirror that somebody mentioned a little bit earlier. Because people like you, if you go away from it, it will never succeed. We'll never have an opportunity to truly make a difference in the men and women, not just the men and women coming out of re-entry, but we have changed, literally, the way that police look at an ex-con. We don't even use that terminology anymore. Amen. There's an important lesson in terminology, though. I didn't even know this. I found this out a couple years ago when we were in West Las Vegas trying to make a difference. And I started my career in West Las Vegas. And I was a pretty damn good cop. Did a lot of good things, put a lot of people in that prison. And we called it the Jets. Anybody know what that is? I didn't know. Big dumb white Irish guy up here didn't know what that was, right? Short for projects. But everybody called it the Jets. I don't know. We set about to changing the name of every housing complex that had a stigma associated with it and called it to give it the dignity that it deserves. Right? Little things that you'll hear from so many of the people around here, and we could talk for hours and hours and hours. But the other thing that I want to make sure that I say that is particularly important is that whatever issue that it is that you have in your community, without bold police leadership, you're going to spin your wheels a lot longer. So you find these men and women, you find those folks on your police department, wherever you're at. Somebody asked about how, I think it was Bob actually, asked, how did you get the top? Well, I'll tell you this. Any police leader in a 1 or 2 position in the police department that said no when the community came to them, they wouldn't be there very long if you exposed them. I'm not afraid to tell people no, based on when they need to be told no. But I'll tell you what, you come to them with something like that, and you say, I need your help, and they turn you away, they shouldn't be your police chief. Take advantage of the opportunity that you have as community members and as groups that are trying to do and to bridge gaps and to heal people and to provide hope in your community by forcing those reluctant police leaders to step across that boundary that they've made for themselves. Because you make policy, don't you? Yeah. We have an opportunity to completely change the way it is that we do. Now, I'm going to finish by saying this to you. I'm not going to tell you of the 3,800 or so commissioned law enforcement members that I have on my organization, that they're all changed. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that we don't make mistakes. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that we're not going to continue to make mistakes. But I am going to tell you that we will fix those mistakes when we become aware of them. We will hold people accountable. We will hold ourselves accountable. And we will continue to try to make a difference here in our community. And Bob, in partnership with you and your folks, to take this across this great nation of ours. So, thank you.
Oh my gosh.